Out of all the things of the original Theros block, gods were probably the most memorable. These 15 gods were released over the course of 3 sets in the block. The 5 monocolored gods were released in Theros, the 5 allied color pairing gods were released in one of the gods, and the 5 enemy pairing color gods were released in Journey into Nyx, the 3rd set. Now since we're going back to Theros, we have 7 new gods that were previewed, and today, I'm going to put them in order. A couple disclaimers before I start this list. When I'm talking about how good these gods are, I'm mainly going to be talking about EDH, as in EDH is the format where these are going to be the most played and or best playable. Dropping a 3, 4, 5, 6, even 6 mana creature, that it may not even be a creature as soon as you drop it, isn't the best in constructed formats. However, like Theros God of the Sea, we do know that some gods are playable in constructed formats. So, without further ado, let's head on to my list. The 7th and worst god, I think, that is in this new cycle is, I don't know, this may be a surprise, Heliod Suncrowned. So, I know what you may be thinking, but this goes infinite with Walking Ballista, this just wins. It's a mono-white combo win con. Yes, but have you read the card? If you're not winning straight up with Walking Ballista or Triskelion, this card kinda sucks. Or don't get me wrong, having a mono-white combo in Commander, especially when one of the pieces is in your command zone, can be very strong. However, this does what mono-white already has. It puts 1/1 counters on things and gain life. And one, if you're not comboing off, the card's awful. I don't like the card at all if you're not just winning with it. And it's not unique either. White has a billion other effects, as I'm sure many other content creators have been talking about. I just don't think this card's very good in isolation. So number 6, I've put Klothys, God of Destiny. This is a 3-mana god that acts kind of like a Deathrite Shaman. It ramps you and it deals damage to your opponents. However, Deathrite Shaman is one of those cards where the higher up in power level you go, the better it gets. So it's not actually that good in low power playgroups where you don't have many fetch lands or anything like that. Also, if you exile a non-land card from your graveyard, it doesn't really do anything. I mean, sure, you gain 2 life and it deals 2 damage to each opponent, but that's not what you want to be doing in Commander. You really want to be going for that ramp. So if you get this out on 2 and 3, you can drop a 5-drop on 2 and 4. That's really what you want to be doing with this card. Unless you have like tons of fetch lands, like all the Zendikar Onslaught fetch lands available to you, plus like Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, Myriad Landscape, etc. You won't really be wanting this card. The reason you want this card in your deck is for the mana ramp, and not for the gain 2 life and deal 2 damage to your opponents. That's extremely lackluster in Commander. So, on number 5. At number 5, we have Nylea Keen-Eyed. So, why did I put this card in number 5? I do think this card is very good. But for it to be good, you need a green creature deck, which I'm sure like, whoa, what do you mean? Green creature decks are everywhere, and this card doesn't have to try to be good in a green creature deck, but yeah, sure, while this card is very good, there are a ton, just like every other god on this list, there are a ton of other cards that do exactly what this wants to do. If you're playing a mono green deck, for example, Emerald Medallion is just better than this, right? It makes all of your green spells cost less, not just your creatures, and you don't have a chance of paying 3 mana to just whiff on the top of your library. Of course, you can put it into the graveyard, which helps you dig deeper, and, well, yeah, that is very good. But I do think this card is good, and I had to push it down because I think the gods above it are slightly better. At number 4, we have Athreos Shroud Veiled. So the thing about this, I love this card. This card seems very sweet, and I do think it's pretty powerful as well. Being able to put coin counters on not your own creatures only, but opposing creatures as well, so you can gain control of them once they die, that seems very good. However, it is 6 mana, and that is a high cost, and if you are playing it in something like Atraxa, for example, you can't even proliferate those counters. So, does that make this a bad card? No. I still think this card is very good, and being able to do that on the end step does make it very powerful indeed, but for the steep cost of 6 mana, I just think the 3 gods above this are just slightly better than it. So, as usual, number 3, 2, and 1 are very close. I think 1 just slightly hedges above the other ones, but I think 3 and 2 are very close, and could even be interchanged if you feel like it. For number 3, I have put Perforos Bronze Blooded. So why did this go above number 2 and number 1? Well, so I think that even if you are on a budget, this is a great card for you, but I think you know what I'm going to say here when I say Sneak Attack is just better. I love how they worded Perforos so that you can't cheat in Eldrazi Titans. If you're in mono grade, you can cheat in anything but the Eldrazi Titans, in fact. And I think that's a pretty nice thing. But as far as I'm concerned, it does what Sneak Attack does, just a little bit worse. And yes, if you're on a budget, you could make this work, and it is still a very powerful effect, as well as being indestructible. But the question is, if you're going for power level, do you really want this over sneak attack? Yeah, sure, it is useful to have a second copy of sneak attack in your deck, but as I mentioned before, this can't sneak into Titans, any Giant Eldrazi. It can sneak in Blightsteel Colossus, but yeah, sure. For the price of playing Perforos, you can play and activate your sneak attack once. For the price of playing Perforos and activating him, you can play sneak attack and activate it 4 times. The multiplier on the activation is just too high for me, and sure, I do think this card is very good, and having able to have a second copy of sneak attack in your decks is very powerful. I think it just gets outshined by sneak attack, and if you're on a budget, that's fine, that's great. But I just don't think this is better than the top 2 gods, in my opinion. Number 2, I have Erebos Bleak-Hearted. It lets you draw cards for free whenever one of your creatures die. And the reason I did free in those air quotes is because 2 life, it may seem like a very small cost to pay whenever a creature dies, but it's not nothing. If you pay, I don't know, if maybe 10 creatures die, you want to draw a card for all those 10 creatures, that's half your starting life total right there. And I think the only thing that puts this over the edge of a Perforos is that this triggers off of your token creatures, so you can draw cards even when those creatures die. And yeah, I do think the sacrifice cost on it is a little steep. Paying 2 mana to sacrifice a creature and give a creature -2/-1 isn't the best, but it is certainly usable, and it's certainly powerful as well. On to number 1. If you're caught up with the spoilers, you know what number 1 is, and this is Thassa Deep Dwelling. This card is powerful. Right, I don't know if it's that powerful for constructed formats, but I know that it's going to be powerful in EDH. Why? It's a second Conjurer's Closet that costs 1 less and is indestructible, and the important part is that it has the exact wording as Conjurer's Closet. So I'm going to read this card out. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So what that means is, if you, I don't know, active treason a creature, you can put them on the stack so this happens first, and then blink it, and then you have control of it permanently. It's also indestructible, so it's infinitely harder to kill than a regular Conjurer's Closet. It costs 1 less, and that tap isn't completely irrelevant. For any Enter the Battlefield deck that is in blue, you are going to want Thassa Deep Dwelling in addition to your Conjurer's Closet, Soul Herder, whatever you have. So, I think that's going to wrap up my top 7 list, ranking all the gods from Theros Beyond Death in order. Tell me down below in the comments what you guys thought. Do you agree with my list, disagree, think Perforos should go above Erebos, vice versa, think, I don't know, Heliod should be number 1 for his combat potential with Walking Ballista? I will heavily disagree with you, but leave your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and like this video if you enjoyed it, dislike if you hated it, etc. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys all next time.